That's very
Um,
odd.
so funny. We're being recorded. It's
I
happening.
know. No swearing, Natalie.
Darn.
Yeah. Right.
The good news is the construction outside of my window is not as loud, but they have like unearthed our entire sidewalk. So I have no idea what kind of work they're doing. They're just doing it. They have one of those like dig things, and there's just a hole in the sidewalk and they're just digging down. So I'm thinking like water line or something, but
Dang.
I don't know
It
construction.
almost it feels like they I haven't been keeping up with the news, but I think I heard they signed like the big infrastructure bill or something, or maybe it didn't. I don't know.
Done and
But like
done.
signed it
Chicago's
and
like, we're on it.
start drilling immediately. Oh man. This has been a very fast day so far.
Brent, do you also want to be in charge of like just trying to keep us on time?
Yeah, I have over here. I have did I send you this or no? Maybe not. I have like a little agenda and timing doc that I made.
Oh, nice.
I'll just
Cool.
share this thing with you too. Matt, you have it. But I'm just gonna do a countdown the other way. And then I'll just send you slacks with where we are on time. Actually, too, once we get in the Miro, you can probably just set the timer for, I'll tell you how much time we have left in total.
Cool. Yeah, for framework, format, and decisions, I'm just going to do 755.
Okay, got it. We should be good then.
Cool. Sweet. So exciting. It's happening. Fix my bangs. Gotta get that brand right.
Wear my hat per usual.
Yeah. Oh, Emma's watching us right now. She said, hi, Emma.
Ah!
Shout out.
All right, and I'll have my chat up too, in case we need to slack about things.
Welcome to Denver Startup Week. I'm Tammy Dorr, President and CEO of the Downtown Denver Partnership and co-chair of Denver Startup Week. This year marks the 10-year anniversary of Denver Startup Week. DSW has been the catalyst for lots of change over the past decade. And this week, we're coming together to celebrate the past and dream big for the future. We are able to bring Denver Startup Week to this community thanks to our 2021 sponsors. Thank you to our HQ and title sponsor, Amazon, and our title sponsors whose leadership makes this week come to life. Capital One Cafe, Downtown Denver Partnership, Fluid Truck, Hotel Engine, and WeWork. And our track sponsors who have made all of the great content you're hearing today possible, our founder track sponsor, Kickstart. Growth track sponsor, Friday Health Plans. Developer track sponsor, Quizlet. Product track sponsor, Palantir. Our designer track sponsor, Battery 621 and the Public Works. People track sponsor, Exactly. And Spotlight event sponsor, Strat Labs. Our headline event sponsors are bringing the excitement to the week. Thank you to B-Side Fund, Colorado Public Radio, Comcast, Coors Brewing, Denver Pavilions, Entrepreneurship at the University of Denver, JP Morgan Chase, Method, Moss Adams, Pi Insurance, Promontory Mortgage, Path, Southwest, Tattered Cover, and VF Venture Foundry. Finally, thank you to our partner and member sponsors, all listed on the screen. Please say thank you to these companies as you enjoy our hybrid Denver Startup Week. And don't forget, use the hashtag #DenStartupWeek to share your experiences and moments of inspiration on social media. Have a great week.
Hello, I'm Sal Gentili, CEO of Friday Health Plans, and we're proud to sponsor the Growth Track this year at Denver Startup Week. We're a company that just entered a rapid growth phase, so we felt it was particularly appropriate. When my business partner and I started Friday Health Plans 5 years ago, we knew we wanted to create a company that catered to people who bought their own health insurance. The Affordable Care Act was just getting going, and we saw an opportunity to serve a brand new market of health insurance consumers. Independent consultants, startup groups, gig workers, service industry workers, designers, creators, and other independent professionals, like many of you here today. We knew that if we built a health plan that was simple to buy, easy to use, had great customer service, and most of all was affordable, we could compete against the big insurance plans who only focus on serving big companies. After spending 5 years getting into the Colorado market and completing a successful proof of concept, we successfully closed a $50 million round of growth funding earlier this year. We're now about to expand to 3 additional states later this year, hire more than 400 employees to support our growth, and eventually be in more than 10 states by 2025. I wish each of you good luck in your startup and growth pursuits. And as you think about your upcoming health insurance needs, I hope you consider fellow growing startup Friday Health Plans. Open enrollment starts November 1st. Check us out at fridayhealthplans.com.
Hello everyone, welcome to Denver Startup Week. I'm Jake Cohen, the Growth Track Chair and member of the Denver Startup Week Organizing Committee. Thank you for joining us for the 10th anniversary of Denver Startup Week. At Denver Startup Week, we strive to make all of our sessions a space where attendees can connect, learn, and grow. Regardless of age, gender identity, gender expression, race, ability, or sexual orientation. A special thank you to our sponsors for their support in helping us to keep Denver Startup Week free and accessible for all. Thank you for joining us and have a great week.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Start to Finish, Build Your Own Email Newsletter Framework, a very long title, but hopefully you're all in the right place. This is going to be a workshop. So when it comes time to do the workshop, we'll have a Google Doc that you can either copy and paste into your own Google Drive, or we also have a Miro link. Miro is a digital whiteboarding software that will be more engaging of a platform to use. So if you're debating between the two, definitely try Miro, but a Google Doc will work as well. So Brent will share those links when it comes time to do that. Just be prepared. If you're on YouTube and watching us, it'll be easier to get access to the link in Zoom, but we also have the URL. So don't worry, you can just type that into and hop into the space. Great, let's get started. So some introductions, we'll do some introductions, introduce who the heck I am. Brent will introduce himself, and then we'll quickly go over essentially what makes a newsletter good. We'll share 3 factors that contribute to essentially making a newsletter that people will want to read. Then we'll hop into that workshop. The workshop itself is broken down into 3 activities: a Mad Libs activity, a brainstorming activity, and then a decision-making activity. So by the end of it, hopefully you'll have a concept for a new newsletter. And then at the very end, we'll do some very quick tips, rapid fire style, and then any Q&A. In Zoom, there is a Q&A function. That's what we'll be pulling questions from. So again, if you're in YouTube and want to submit a question, the best way to do that is using that Q&A feature. All right, let's get started. So a little bit about us. I'm Natalie Gotko, and I work with Brent at Click Studios. Click is a digital creative agency that essentially works with businesses to help them define their digital strategy and then build something and put it out into the world. Both Brent and I are senior content strategists, and we sit on an internal writing team as well. And that's how we contribute to our newsletter. So at Click, we send out a weekly newsletter, and that's what we're talking about today. A little bit about me personally, and the emojis go in suit with this, is I love food in general. Specifically, I'm on a sushi kick. I love to read. I read a lot of books, but mostly fiction. And then I also love dogs. So Brent, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Brent Trotter, another senior content strategist at Click. A little bit about me: I'm a new dad, poker enthusiast, and NBA fan, hence the hat. Go Bulls. So hopefully you saw that preseason game yesterday. I feel optimistic for the first time in like a decade about the team. So like Natalie was saying, like we help with like story structure and strategy for web products and properties, but we also help promote the work that we do, writing for our blog, creating case studies, and helping writing for our company newsletter, Open Tabs, which is why we're here today. So in 2019, we were kind of identifying like what areas could we grow for our organization, right? We landed on our newsletter as one of the good ways as a marketing channel for us to do that. It's an opportunity for us to like keep better in touch with our clients, to share meaningful stuff, to have a space ultimately to let people in our community, our clients, et cetera, know what we were up to. So we were like, let's refresh our whole newsletter format. So at the beginning of 2020, of all years, we started sending out a newsletter reintroducing Open Tabs to the world. So we sent it once a month until about April, took a little break as things just like felt different and more meaningful to focus on during that time of the year. Picked it back up in late summer and started building, a good amount of momentum heading into the next year. And so as we started to see things moving in the right direction, our boss asked us, what if you sent this out weekly? Typical boss question, as bosses do. So we refined our formula, put a bunch of like internal systems, processes, et cetera, in place. And since have sent like 34 consecutive newsletters, pretty much every Tuesday at 8 a.m. since like April of this year. So goals being like growing our audiences of clients, community members, and like other practitioners as well. So it's something we've been really proud of. And our talk today is essentially about the ingredients of that framework and how you can build or improve on the one that you have for you and your organization. So we're going to talk a little bit about the base ingredients of a good newsletter. So audience first, consistent, and unique yet purposeful are what we're kind of thinking of as the base ingredients for a good newsletter. So when we say audience first, we're talking about like if people don't know or if people don't think that it's for them, they're not going to sign up and they're going to delete every single email, right? So knowing who your thing is for and keeping that like top of mind when it comes to topics or content or whatever is going to be really, really essential for making a good email newsletter. So one example of that is Fatherly. I mentioned that I'm a new dad. They send like practical, relevant parenting advice. They talk about products. They tell stories about fatherhood. They give, a lot of good kind of heartfelt tips and stuff. And as a new parent, for me, that's super great. And it's a super niche thing. And it's as niche as it gets, you could say. But I know exactly who that's for when I'm signing up for it. And it's one of the reasons that I'm going to keep coming to it. And as long as I'm a dad and they're sending out good stuff, it's probably going to be a good newsletter for me to stay signed up for. So the next one is about being consistent. So people like to sign up for stuff they can predict, right? People like knowing like I'm going to get this thing every Tuesday. I know a lot of you are probably listeners of the daily. And I'm like, hey, it's going to be here at 6 a.m. every day. And I know I can plan my schedule around that. So whether it's like a daily newsletter or weekly, monthly, whatever, getting that cadence is gonna be helpful for your audience, but also like you, the person that's producing, planning it, creating it, like knowing when you have to send it is going to help you insert promotional things, is going to help you know what things are timely, and building a structure around like being able to do that is really helpful. So Morning Brew, as an example, one newsletter you all are probably familiar with, helps people keep informed on the news. It's a daily, super quick email that helps people do that. And I know people that literally consume it regularly, like with their daily coffee. So it's one of those things, like knowing what the thing is going to be consistently, and getting it at the same time all the time. And then especially one of the things I was thinking about is like, if you send something off of that consistent track, that can be a very cool surprise after you've done it consistently for a really long time. So it's a cool opportunity to surprise people if they get a special thing when they're used to it. And then the last one, arguably the most important of the third ingredient, is going to be having something that's unique yet purposeful. So ultimately you're trying to build something that's going to stand out in a way that's like unique to you and your brand, and it's helping you achieve specifically the goals that you have for your organization. So we get a lot of emails in our inbox. I think we're getting better at filtering out the noise and like deleting the stuff that doesn't really matter. But I think one of the emails that I've been signed up for since college, and he's probably been sending it since before then, has been Seth Godin's email. So he sends it daily. His newsletter is a great example about like forward thinking, provocative ideas on marketing, on like just doing good work on culture, etc. But it's very specific to him, his style. You can even tell like there's no images all the time. It's like, it's just the words. It's all about the writing. And what he's kind of put together is very unique to him. And so when I'm looking for inspiration, it's one of the first things I go, and one of the first places I go. And I think it's something that he's kind of curated intentionally. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to help y'all build a framework that allows you to do that as well. So I'm going to drop some links into this doc.
So now is time for the workshop. So if you're just following along and listening, that's totally fine, but you're going to have some dead space while people ideate. But definitely use this link. So you can either just type this link into your browser, or Brent is going to post some links in the chat for you as well. Like I said, you can either hop in the Miro board, which is this link here. The Miro board looks something like this. As everyone joins, it'll get pretty crowded. So just be prepared for a lot of mouses everywhere. But feel free to hop in here. Otherwise, you can use the Google Doc that Brent's about to send and just make a copy to your drive. It's the same thing, just in a worksheet form. So whatever your technical prowess is, feel free to decide for yourselves. But cool, when you get in Miro, some functionality.
I just sent the direct Miro link. Sorry as well. For some reason, the short one didn't work for me when I sent that version of it. But I could also might have typed it wrong. So I just sent the Miro link. So let me know if it's working for y'all. I'm seeing yeses, so that's good.
I see some people hopping in, which is great.
So many people.
Cool. So essentially Miro is a tool that you can do a lot of tricks in, but we're only going to make you learn how to do one, which is great. To start, feel free to start kind of zooming around the board. In the bottom right-hand corner, there's that view. You can use that and just click on it, and it'll help you navigate it. You can also, if you're using a mouse pad, just use 2 fingers and drag it along the mouse pad. That'll help you navigate it. If you're using an actual mouse, you can click on the board, click this little mouse, it changes it to a hand, and you can drag the board around and then click on the mouse again to stop the drag feature. Cool. So that's how you navigate the board. If you're having trouble, definitely try to troubleshoot, but there's always that Google Doc option for you as well. What we'll be doing is using sticky notes primarily. So with the sticky note feature, to make a new sticky note, you can click on this sideboard, click the sticky note color, and you'll make one. You can resize it. But we've already got sticky notes on the boards for you all to use as well. Another way to use sticky notes is to actually write in the sticky note. So you double click on the sticky note and then it'll just auto adjust whatever you want to type in there, which is pretty great. When you're done, you just click out of the sticky note. So again, click a sticky note, double tap it, a cursor will show up and you can type in it. What we're gonna have you all do is actually find a board. As you'll see, we've got these cute little animal emojis. This was to help us try to spread people out. So feel free to pick whatever animal in this list is your favorite. Find a board. And once you do, we have a toggle, and I'll show you on this lines one board. So once you find a board, feel free to click on this and then click on. That way people know, oh, this board is taken. So feel free to go find a board, click it on, and that way no one will bother you on your board. If anyone is having trouble finding a board, let me know, but definitely I see people making sticky notes and playing around. Feel free to keep doing that. If Miro ever starts doing anything weird for you, so Miro, again, you can draw on Miro, you can create arrows in Miro, you can do shapes. If any of that starts happening, your home button is this select arrow key. So if you get stuck, like for example, drawing lines and you're like, oh no, I just drew a line, ignore the line, leave the line, but just click your arrow key again, and that'll kind of help you reset if you get stuck in a functionality or feature. Cool. Let me check my notes and see if that's it. Yep, I think that is it. So again, find a board, turn that knob on so people know that you're in that board, and then we'll get started. Like I said, this workshop is broken into 3 different activities. You'll see that on your board. If you're in the Google Doc, you'll also see that page by page. The first activity is all about finding a strategic framework, and essentially it's Mad Lib style. So the strategic framework, the goal here is for this one sentence to be the guiding platform for how you brainstorm and then make decisions about your newsletter. We've got it broken down into 3 different fill in the blank categories. The first being audience, the second being problems that you're going to help your audience solve, and then the third being a unique value add. For this portion, we'll have about 7 minutes for you to work through this. But we've got an example here for all of you to kind of see where we're getting at. So as an example, my newsletter is to help new parents raise their children by sharing empathetic, scientific-based advice from experts. So you can see how that really helps essentially narrow down your newsletter's purpose, and again, would help you start generating ideas on what your newsletter could share with your audience. So what you'll do is start with the audience category, essentially answering the question, who can your newsletter provide value to? If you're doing a newsletter for an organization, this should be probably one of your target audiences, and try to be as specific as possible. The next category that we're having you brainstorm is the problems. So what challenges does that person face? Listing a few can help you come up with a lot of different solutions. So instead of just raising their children, it could be helping their children grow, helping their children make friends. You could really break it down in terms of, instead of just having raise their children at the top. So feel free to list a few here and essentially come up with different challenges your newsletter can help address. And then the last one is what makes your organizations, what's the value add for them? The goal here is to anchor it in your differentiator. So again, if you're doing it for your organization, try to really focus in on what makes you different from other competitors. And keeping this broad can really help this become a platform for creativity. And that's just a tip. The goal here is to use the Mad Libs to help you write your framework, but you can definitely be flexible with this framework as well. As long as it's 1 to 2 sentences that help guide you in your newsletter, you're off to a great start. I think we can get started. I will set a timer for 7 minutes. Feel free to do some research, brainstorm a bunch of ideas, and get started. If you have any questions, pop them in the chat and Brent and I will try to answer them as we can. All right, we've got about 2 minutes left. So if you haven't already, start reading your sticky notes and trying to come up with that single sentence or two that really defines who your newsletter is for, what's it trying to solve, and the unique value add that you're giving your subscribers. And as you write your statements, feel free to post them in the chat for other people, just in case they need inspiration. And then we can move on. So 45 seconds left. Feel free to share it in the chat if you'd like to. Again, it'd be helpful for other people who might be struggling to come up with the right words for theirs. Great. So wrap up that single statement that you're going to roll with for the rest of this activity. And then we'll move on to the second portion. So step 2 is to really just brainstorm as many ideas as you possibly can. For this activity, really do not worry about quality control. The third step of this activity is where that will come into play. So write down any idea that comes to mind. Don't worry if it's a good idea or a bad idea. Just get it on paper. Again, quantity, not quality. And we've got some constraints that you'll see down here for you to consider, but don't consider them now. Just ignore them for now. Some examples going off of our example from the strategic framework in the first activity is an interview with an expert on a topic. So again, for a newsletter for new parents to help raise their children by sharing empathetic, scientific-based advice from experts, one way to do that would be to every single newsletter have a different interview with an expert on a topic. And that's the newsletter that you send every single week. Another idea could be a question answer format where somebody is submitting an answer at the end of every newsletter. So there's a call to submit an answer or a question, and then in the next newsletter, you answer it. So kind of churning that engagement. Another idea could just be curated articles all about parenting. So you're just sending a bunch of articles that you're finding for parents. So again, come up with as many ideas as you possibly can, specifically thinking about the content in the newsletter. To help you think about different ideas, consider any newsletters you've gotten, consider social media platforms and what kind of content you can find on there. Consider long form and short form. And again, really don't worry about how am I actually going to execute on this. We'll get to that in the next portion. This is floodgates open. No idea is a bad idea. Get it down. For this activity, we'll have about 5 minutes, might add a few more based on how people are feeling, but feel free to start brainstorming. If you run out of sticky notes, one way to get more sticky notes is to right click on a sticky note and hit duplicate, and that'll pop up a new sticky note for you. You can also just copy and paste a sticky note like you would on your normal computer of Control C, Control P. Or you can use this, again, sticky note function over here. It might give you a different size, but again, you can size it down. So if you run out of sticky notes, you can always make more, but try to get as many ideas as you can on what you could send in your newsletter. Sweet, I'm gonna set the timer for 5 minutes. Get brainstorming. All right, we've got 1 minute left, so keep brainstorming your ideas. And again, if you want to share some of your ideas that you have for content, feel free to pop those in the chat. That way, if you have an idea that could work for somebody else's newsletter, we're helping each other out. So feel free to add any ideas that you have to the chat. Sweet. Great. So now hopefully you've got a ton of ideas to choose from. Hopefully you're thinking a lot about different ways that you can engage with people in the content that you share. Now it comes time to do that quality control that I talked about earlier. So a really valuable matrix that we use a lot when it comes to making decisions about what's feasible in a website that we're building or an application, or in this case, a newsletter, is this effort versus impact matrix. So high effort to low effort, high impact to low impact, just based on the colors and kind of what you can assume. The bottom right-hand corner, the low effort, high impact, are those ideas that it would be silly if we didn't pursue, right? Because they're going to have the highest impact for our users, and on us, it's pretty low effort. And then that top left corner, the high effort, low impact, are the things that might not be worth pursuing, right? Because they're just a lot of effort. Our audience isn't going to be that impacted by them. So those might be the ideas that we leave on the cutting board floor. So essentially what we're going to have you do is, with your sticky notes that you've generated, just drag them and plop them where you think they belong in this matrix. Below, we've got some constraints to talk through, but we'll do that after this. So just go through your ideas. We'll spend about 5 minutes doing this activity and really think about, will this idea have impact in my audience? And how much effort will it take to do this idea again and again for my newsletter? As you move ideas, feel free to tweak them. So if an idea you think has a lot of high impact, but is also going to be high effort, but there's a really similar idea that you could maybe tweak it and make it fit into that green section, feel free to do that. So this is kind of, again, that quality control. This is how you can filter those big ideas that you might have to make it a little bit more feasible for yourself. So feel free to plot and start plotting your ideas. I'll set the timer for 5 minutes. If you're in the Google Doc, you can just copy and paste your ideas in the matrix that we provided for you instead of moving the sticky notes. But go ahead and get started. And if you're done plotting your ideas and still have these 3 minutes to kill, again, think about how you can tweak your ideas to maybe get more in that low effort, high impact category or high effort, high impact category. And then also feel free to submit any questions that you have about newsletters in general for me and Brent, or about any decisions that you're making around your newsletter. Feel free to pop that in the Q&A chat in the Zoom link.
And we had a question pop in, and it's actually perfect timing as far as the section that we're kind of going over now. So the question was, as a solopreneur who can't yet afford to outsource a newsletter, how can we go about providing new content consistently in a template, sending it out without it taking over time as we're trying to build our business? So I think that's a question that a lot of people are probably thinking through, especially newsletters can be time consuming. We're fortunate to have like a team of writers that kind of rotates in the production of it, which kind of balances that out a little bit. So I think after you kind of have a framework in place, that's when you want to start considering these kind of constraints. So how much time do you have? How often can you send this? How much money can you invest in it? That kind of stuff. And then this decision matrix will kind of help you in thinking through what elements of a newsletter you can send out to deliver the most value within the timing that you all have to do it. And then as you kind of grow your business, you can expand the value that you're able to give to your newsletter and deliver once you have more time and more resources to do that.
Yep. And Brent kind of touched on this, but it's easier to scale up than it is to scale back. So I would say start small, start with that low effort, high impact stuff. Maybe 1 or 2 ideas that you have that you think will really draw people in, and then sprinkle in more and more content once you have more capacity and commitment to give to your newsletter. All right, we've got 40 seconds left. So finish up charting your matrix, finish up making tweaks, and then we'll go over constraints and show you how to export your board if you're using Miro, so you can save it.
And Kathleen had a question about how do we feel about, well, I'll field the question after Natalie wraps up this section. We were just running out of time there.
Sweet. Cool. So like I said, this matrix was just to help you start thinking about how to essentially make decisions around what of your ideas to include. What we've got down here are some constraints that Brent just hit in at, that essentially is anything that can stop you from moving forward with your ideas. So this is essentially homework for you all. We didn't know how to make this interactive because a lot of it is going off and making sure that you're thinking of everything. But the first one is time and cadence. So how much time are you willing to commit to your newsletter? And then how frequently can you feasibly send your newsletter? Like Brent talked about with open tabs, we started just doing it monthly, and then we started doing it bi-monthly. And then when our boss challenged us to send it weekly, we figured out how to send it weekly as well. So again, scaling up in that fashion makes sense. If you're unsure how much time you have, a monthly newsletter is fairly feasible to kind of test it out and to see how much time it takes you to even create what you think you're creating. Collaborators, so who else is helping you produce your newsletter? If it's just you, that's fairly easy in terms of coordinating things. But if there's multiple people, what are their roles? How can you facilitate collaboration, whether there's a set schedule that people can be on the lookout for? If you have an editor, they know that every Tuesday you send your newsletter, so on Monday they're going to have to edit it and approve it. That kind of leads to stakeholders who will be affected at your company by what you produce in your newsletter, and will you need anyone's approval? So this can get in the nitty gritty of if you want to share something on your company website, you might need approval to share a specific link, but also you might just need approval in terms of the newsletter as a whole. So make sure that you understand who those stakeholders are. You set a schedule for them, you're communicating with them, and you make sure that they feel heard in the process from the beginning, but then also those like micro stakeholders as you send out newsletter after newsletter. And then lastly, the budget. How much money can you allocate on producing the newsletter? This will affect everything else that we already talked about. One of the good things about a newsletter is that oftentimes software allows you to track views, clicks, everything like that. So it's really easy to have a KPI or an ROI to share and prove value. But that value is oftentimes exponential. So at the beginning of your newsletter, you probably won't be able to have direct numbers backing up your decision to even start a newsletter in the first place. So definitely budget is something to consider in terms of what's possible and how much time you can commit to your newsletter and resources. So these are all constraints to help you start thinking about your decisions above. To export this board, if you're like, I want to print this out, frame it, put it on my fridge, or just save it and keep it for later, you can click on your board, make sure that you see the full board selected in that blue outline. And then up at the top, there's the 3 buttons, and you can hit export as image. When you click that, you'll get a little bubble and you can click PDF. That's what we recommend. JPEGs also work, but it would just be an image instead of a PDF. PDF we found is easier to read and easier to work with. So that's how you can export your board. Again, that's you click on the very edge and you should see a blue bar encapsulate your board, 3 dot button, export as image, and then select PDF and hit export. You can also just take a screenshot of it if you know how to do that, but the quality might not be as good. This board will also remain up. So if you have a link to the Miro, you'll have a link to this board. We're not going to delete it. It's going to probably stay in the ether until Miro decides to delete it after, I don't know how Miro decides to delete things, but it'll be up for at least a year. Hopefully you can export it by then, but feel free to continue working on your board and exploring this board as a whole. Miro is a really great software that we love to use at Click. Great. I will turn it back over to Brent. We've got some quick tips and then we'll get to your Q&As. So keep putting them in the Q&A feature for us.
Awesome. So I'm just going to run down these kind of super quick tips really quick, and then we can get to those quick questions that you all have. So these are just a few bullet points as a checklist reminder of like things to consider. It's not comprehensive at all. These are some of the ones that we keep in mind when we're producing our newsletter, but obviously there's going to be a lot more, especially as you get more kind of advanced with things. So clear, intriguing subject line, major key. First step to getting them is to read your newsletter is to get them to read the next thing. Once you get more practice, you can start doing A/B testing and all that stuff of different subject lines, seeing like which kind of subject lines are resonating with your audience, etc. Sending it from a person or company instead of Gmail. I know a lot of people when they're starting off, they might have Gmail and they're just trying to build up their list that way. Gmail is super sensitive to like spam, and they don't want you to get marked as spam. You don't want your email to get marked as spam. So sending it from a company, putting them on a list, having them like kind of in a listserv is going to be helpful for you. You can use MailChimp, you can use ConvertKit, all sorts of different platforms allow you to do that. Including clear call to actions. You don't want to litter your email necessarily with call to actions. A couple clear, distinct ones for the areas that you want people to go to is going to be really helpful. Reminding people what it's about. The header and footer is a great place for this. I've seen people that literally have, here is the description of what our newsletter is right in the header. Some people, us in particular, like put it in the footer as a reminder. to anchor people, especially like when you're forwarding it. Hey, I found this great newsletter. It's a great place to have that description. So many people are reading all of their newsletters and anything on mobile. So you want to make sure when you're looking at your email newsletter, the way it's going out, that it's optimized for that. Oftentimes, like much more simple designs are going to be better for mobile as far as your emails, and then also deliverability rates and all that good stuff. Sending in the time of the recipient is really helpful instead of the sender. So MailChimp has this time warp tool. So it allows us to send it at 8 a.m. to people that are in all sorts of places. So whether you're in the East Coast or the West Coast, you'll get it at 8 a.m. your time every time. So that's been a helpful thing, even as we communicate that information out as well. It's helpful to say like 8 a.m. And then you don't even have to mention the time zones. Sending test emails. We catch so many random errors, little stuff, no matter how many times we look at it. We send it out to the team that's working on the newsletter. Everybody's looking at different things all the time. And so it's always going to be super helpful to send test emails out. Send a couple of them to your internal teams before you send it out to the masses. Making subscribing super easy and accessible is really great. We have a way that if you forward your email, you can say like, hey, this email was forwarded here, and then you can click it and it gets you to our landing page so you can see how to subscribe if you get forwarded that way. And then having fun with it. I think one of the things that's made writing this newsletter so great is that it's one of the things that we enjoy writing. And people say like, if you don't enjoy making the thing, it's not going to be fun for the people that are consuming it. So that's kind of our quick tip list. I'm going to get to as many of these questions as I can. There were a couple questions that kind of rolled in. So one of them was, how do you feel about snippets and a link to internally produced videos? I think video content that you can consume, especially if it's in the newsletter, oftentimes is really great. If you can embed it, even better. But if you have to link out, that's fine as well. I would say the main thing is like consider how much of that content you're putting in there. Oftentimes people are consuming newsletters as more of a quicker experience. So if you're linking off to content that's going to be like, here, watch this 5-minute video, they might not come back and consume the rest of your email. So even like the placement of where you put that is going to be important too.
Right, I'm going to hop in. I'm seeing a lot of people having issues exporting. That's definitely a thing that I forgot about Miro, is that you need a paid account in order to export. So what I'll do for everyone is I'm sending my email. If you want to shoot me an email with the name of your board, so what animal and what number it is, I'll export a PDF for you and send it your way. So just let me know, shoot me an email with, again, your animal and board number. And I will export that for you and send it via PDF. So I'm happy to do that for everyone here.
And Jeff mentioned a good tip too. You can also take a screenshot of it as well if you wanted the quick and dirty version. But Natalie will be able to get that exported to you as well. The next question was, what would you consider effective content for B2B? This is a big question. It's a kind of broad question. I would say it kind of depends on the audience, what their challenges are, and ultimately like what value you want to produce and create for them. I think there's a lot of different newsletters all over that kind of have varying degrees of value. I would say to focus on the problems that they have is one of the ways to send very effective B2B content. I know a lot of people that create that content are very like, if you focus on the problems and offer them good, thoughtful solutions, that would be just a general tip. But as far as what's effective, I think matching that up with your audience, what their interests are, and what value you offer is going to be important. We had another question about how segmented is our Open Tabs audience. So our audience, our newsletter goes out to everyone every time. It's a blend of, clients, community members, colleagues, peers, friends, family members, etc. But it's designed to kind of be a weekly source of creative inspiration that's useful for any of those audience groups. So we have the ability to send to specific segments as well, but our newsletter pretty much goes out to everybody every time. I think there were a few others. I'm going to try to get to them in the Q&A section, but I almost want to let's see if I can read another one. What if you're an early stage startup company primarily using your newsletter to keep your potential investors and customers updated on your progress? Any suggestions for making this more audience focused? I might need to marinate on that one a little bit. I think you're on the right track from the beginning, though. You're saying you want to make it more audience focused. I don't know. It's something about it feels like it's a pretty personal question as well, like in terms of what kind of information they're looking to consume or what information is important to them. But I think you're on the right track in keeping it more audience focused. To the question earlier about like segmenting different audience types, I think getting specific about that and what their needs might be could be helpful as well. I think we're pretty much at time. We wanted to give a few quick seconds to wrap up, and then if you all wanted to get in contact with us, this is my information here. Natalie is sharing a copy of the presentation as well. My name again is Brent Trotter. Here are our email addresses if you want to reach out. If I didn't get to your questions, if I didn't get to follow up, you can shoot us an email and we'll do our best to answer.
And then if you're interested, obviously we've got to do this shameless plug. In checking out our own newsletter, feel free to go to this URL. We have some sample newsletters for you all, but this newsletter also breaks down, this landing page breaks down what's included in our newsletter that we send out every week. Again, if you want me to help you export your board, shoot me an email with the name of the animal and the number. We're at a minute now, so thank you all for joining. I hope this was an interactive break to some other presentations, and I hope you guys learned a lot. So thank you.
Thank y'all so much.